Hello, and thank you for joining us today. DynamicOps provides a robust self-service cloud experience. However, every enterprise customer has different needs. In order to meet these needs, DynamicOps provides a highly extensible and customizable web portal so that you can meet exactly the requirements of your business. So I'm going to take you through the extensibility of this portal and how you can easily manipulate it to meet your needs. So for today's agenda, we're first going to review what the MVC architecture means. And then we're going to show you how the DynamicOps MVC-based approach accelerates extensibility for the self-service portal. And then we'll take you through a demonstration of this extensibility. So first of all, a quick refresher or primer on the MVC architecture if you're not familiar. MVC stands for Model View Controller and is a way to actually abstract business logic from the presentation to the end user. So there's three real components to that. First, there's the model. This layer defines the business logic, and the database belongs to this layer as well. There's the view. That's what the user interacts with. It's how the data is presented through the UI, through the browser, out to the user. And then the controller is a piece of code that calls the model to get some data, interacts with it, and then passes to the view for rendering on the client. So all the business logic that is normally intermingled with the actual presentation views is actually abstracted away so it has a nice clean architecture when you're extending the portal. So some of the benefits of MVC include really abstracting away the business logic from the presentation layer. That way I can create any sort of business logic and then have all sorts of different views into how that's presented to my end user without changing any business logic. There's quick creation of controllers and easy modification of the DynamicOps portal or integration with any third-party portal so that I can create controllers that are specific to my environment and then tie them into the portal without really changing much outside of the view. It really provides unlimited flexibility as well. And our DynamicOps Cloud Development Kit, or CDK for short, will provide examples and information on these extensions so that your developers can rapidly leverage these going forward. So in our demonstration today, we're going to show the dynamic changing of views based upon a user. Maybe one business unit wants their users to log in and get their branding, and another business unit wants their users to log in and get a separate branding. All of that can be easily controlled through the DynamicOps portal. We'll be able to modify the portal interface and logic with a SharePoint server calculator. So instead of just having to select how many servers you need, we'll add in special functionality that allows you to select how many users are going to use the system, and then it will automatically generate the number of servers necessary to support that implementation. And then we'll modify the hover menu choices and their functionality. So being able to take a mouse and hover it over a particular machine, add in a different action, in this case a send mail, to chronicle the actual configuration of that system. We'll show you exactly how easy it is to modify that. Now the key capabilities to view here are really how quickly and easily the interface is updated. It's the dynamic nature of the portal as well, understanding who the user is and being able to change its view on the fly. And then the ability to build user-specific functionality as an administrator as opposed to a full developer. So let's go ahead and switch into our demonstration. Okay, we're on our demonstration station. I'm going to go ahead and open up Internet Explorer. And to give you the first demonstration, we're going to show you how the interface dynamically switches between the user's view. So I'm going to go ahead and log in as my dev user, enter in my password, and go and say OK. So now when they log in, they're actually going to get the blue interface here. The view is called Slick. Okay? Now if I go into my user and I go into General Settings under Preferences, you'll notice that there's nothing here around selecting my view, selecting my theme. Right? It's automatically chosen programmatically back in the database because that's how the administrator wanted it. Now if I go in and log into the same interface and I log in using demo, what you're going to see here, this is my data entry user, and my data entry user gets an entirely different interface. So what you see here is this is what we call the Slick Blackout view. And again, if we come inside of here to General Settings, you'll notice that they can't select this view. So what's happened on the back end is when the user logs in, they'll actually see a completely different view based upon who they are and what the business policy is set for that particular view. Okay, so now we've seen how we can programmatically set the view for two different users. So now what I'm going to do next is actually show you how you can add in some additional functionality around calculating the sizing of a SharePoint implementation. So I'm going to go ahead and log in as my DCAC admin here first. And then I'm going to go in and log in as my dev user. Now, for my dev user, I'm going to go into Blueprints, and I'm going to say, look, I'm going to request a SharePoint server. Now, right now, if I go in, what you see here is there's only general settings and number of machines I can select, and hey, that's great. But you know what? What if I don't know a lot about SharePoint? What happens if there's a 5,000 user implementation versus a 100 user implementation? How am I going to know how many servers to actually utilize? Well, we could actually change this functionality pretty easily so that we can calculate out how many servers you need and advise when they're making the request. So I'm going to go ahead and say cancel here. I'm going to go into my administrator here. And the first thing I'm going to do is go down to my global blueprints. And what we'll show you here is here's our blueprint for the server 2010 for SharePoint. Now go ahead and hit edit. Here's our blueprint that has all sorts of assignments to it for our groups who can use it. Number of machines, our archive policies, our approval policies. Go into build information. This is actually a clone workflow, which is pretty good. And in how many CPUs I have, memory, reserve storage, lease days, all of those types of things. But you know what? I really want to add to this capability. What I really want to add to this blueprint is the ability to say, look, don't just give them the number of machines or the ability to select the number of machines. Let's give a certain calculation around the amount of users. So in order to do that, we can manipulate our property dictionary. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is move down to the property dictionary. And what you'll see here is we have a few different settings. So the first thing that we would do is to actually say, look, I'm going to create a list of SharePoint users. So here we have our SharePoint users. I'm going to say edit. And what I've done is I've built a value list here. It says that my breakpoints for understanding how to calculate the number of servers required is at 10 to 99 users, 100 to 249, 250 to 499, and so on. Now, once I've created that value list, right, I now need to be able to lay that out as you want it to appear inside of the blueprint. So under SharePoint values here, I'll go ahead and say edit. And here's my SharePoint users that I want to have inside of here. And I actually have another field that's called add servers. So that I can say, well, based on the calculation that happens with the SharePoint users, then auto pre-populate the additional servers I need inside of here. And then that will inform the process of how many servers I actually need to make sure I meet the requirement of those number of users. And I say OK. Now, that's created as a global. Now I have to implement that inside of my global blueprint. So it's applicable to that specific blueprint's information. So if I go back into global blueprints here, and I go into my SharePoint server, click edit, I'm going to go ahead and move over to our properties field. And now you'll notice down here I have these custom properties. So what I'm going to do now is say, okay, let's add a new property. And the new property I'm going to add is called add servers, and that matches that list I had. I'm going to leave the value empty and go and say, I want to prompt the user. Now, really what's happening is on the back end, we have a workflow that's tied to add servers. So what will happen is as I select actual users out of the list, it will turn around and pre-populate this add servers list through the workflow. And that's my custom logic. I'm going to say, OK. And then I'll add another new property, which is called SharePoint users. SharePoint users. Leave the value blank and say prompt the user. Now what we've just done is made a connection between the property dictionary entries that we created and this particular blueprint. So I'll go ahead and say OK. So now when I go in and I log in as my dev user, and this time when I actually make a request, we're going to see something different. So I'll go into blueprints. There's my SharePoint server. Go ahead and click on that. But now what you'll see is before, when there was only general settings, you now have additional settings. Go ahead and click on that, Here's my SharePoint users. I'm going to go ahead and click 100 to 249, and you'll notice that it pre-populated that I need one additional. But you know what? If I turned around and went back down to 1099, it actually pre-populates that I need no additional servers, and so on and so forth. So I'm going to say additional, and then I would just go ahead and click submit, and this would go off and create my additional servers. Okay, so let's move on to our last demonstration. So let's say that a user wants to chronicle the actual configuration of their virtual machines. There's a lot of possible ways to do that. But in our demonstration, what we're going to do is actually show you how we wire up a send email through our design center. It'll take a configuration information of that particular virtual machine, send it to you in an email, and then you can keep that for posterity's sake. So the first thing we're going to do here is go back to my self-service portal, and I'm logged in as my dev user. Now if I go into my machines here, it's going to list out the machines that are assigned to me. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this. You'll notice on the right hand side my actions list is updated. And underneath here we have many options, but none of them are send configuration. We want to be able to add that into the system. So what I'm going to do is hop on over to my server here, where I have the DynamicOps Design Center up and running. So now the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and say load. I'm going to look at our central repository, go and select our machine menus and say OK. Now what I did prior to this is I went in, I actually used our send email object to create a customized workflow that actually added in our set of emails. So now what we've done on the back end is create a template that actually allows you to fill in information from the configuration of the machine. So if I go ahead and send this back to our repository, loads it up inside of there. Okay. And now I want to be able to make that available inside of our blueprint to our individual users. So I'll flip back to my admin portal and go to Enterprise Administrator, and I'll go into my blueprints. Now, under my global blueprint, I'll select my SharePoint and say Edit. And underneath here, go into Security. And what you'll see here is this Send Configuration option is now part of the blueprint. So I'm going to go ahead and make that available. And I'm going to say, look, apply this security change to all existing machines from this blueprint. Because we want to be able to add and remove security as needed, add and remove functionality as needed, even to pre-existing machines, not just future machines. It keeps them consistent. So now I'll go down and say, OK. There we go. And now, when I go back into my dev user and log in, I'll go back to machines. So now when I click on the machine name here, you'll see on the right-hand side as the actions list fills out, there's a new action list, which is send configuration. So this allows me now to go ahead and click that, and I'll send the actual configuration for this machine to the email address of the owner of the virtual machine, my dev user. Go ahead and click submit. And now we'll give it a minute. And then I'll go ahead and move over to my email client here. And in my email client, I'll be able to kick off the email and actually see the configuration of that machine. So now, as you can see, we've received an email from the system. Inside of the email, again, this is just a very basic example, but we're able to see the CPUs, the RAM, the disk, but it's pretty much limitless what you can add inside of here, including custom properties, any sort of performance information that you can glean out of the system. Again, literally it's up to you to determine through Design Center what level of properties and detail that you actually want to include inside of that email. But now we've been able to easily add in a hover menu function, additional capacity fired for the user, really meant to tailor that experience to your particular business need. So as you can see, the DynamicOps self-service portal is highly customizable to meet your specific business requirements. We've shown you through the demonstration that we're able to extend the portal by adding hover menu custom functionality. We're able to add in an entirely different way to do provisioning through the SharePoint example, and we were able to manipulate the view of the interface based upon who the user is. Literally, your options are limitless. So really with DynamicOps, we deliver an enterprise-class cloud computing infrastructure in the shortest amount of time with the least amount of cost. We have comprehensive out-of-the-box functionality that gets you to cloud very, very quickly. Our user-centric, business-aware governance really makes sure that each business unit gets exactly what it needs using the tools it needs. It's extensible by design, as you saw through the demonstration. It has a holistic approach between private and public, virtual and physical, servers and desktops, and very soon applications as well. It's multi-vendor, open agnostic, and has the most mature production environments today in the industry. We have implementations around 5,000, 10,000, 50,000, and 100,000 VMs under management. That is unique for the industry. My name's Chad Jones. Thank you very much for joining us today, and we'll see you the next time.